So, yeah, thank you everyone for being here. And I figure we might as well get started by introducing who we are and which program we're kind of here associated with. So I will get started. So I'm Spencer. I use he, him pronouns, and I am Max's mental health programs coordinator. So meaning I'm kind of associated with all the programs to help make them run smoothly, as well as any other mental health initiatives that Max does. Um, Jeremy, because you are to my right, can I throw you under the bus a little?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Jeremy. Pronouns are also he, him. I am a volunteer for the peer support program here at Max. And I'm also third year student doing my honors thesis that is associated with Max as well. So yeah.
And how about you, Charlie?
For sure. My name's Charlie. I use they and them pronouns, and I'm the current health navigator at Max Ottawa. So I work primarily with our mental health navigation program, as well as our Senior Pride Online tablet rental program.
And David, last but certainly not least.
Hello, my name is David. I use he, him pronouns. So I was a facilitator for two online groups with Max Ottawa, most recently the body image group. And then prior to that, I did the anxiety reduction group in French. And other than that, I'm a PhD student in psychology out in, well, mostly in Ontario, in Waterloo. Yeah.
Okay. And so I realize that we're all in like varying levels of, expertise when it comes to mental health and psychology as like an overall topic. But I figure, for the next little piece, we can kind of turn it into something we're all experts on, which is in ourselves. And I was hoping, again, to the extent of whatever everyone's comfortable with, to hear a little bit about what everyone's experience has been of the pandemic, particularly in relation to your own mental health. So I'll share a little bit about myself in that. So I have worked with Max for 8 or 9 months. I'd have to quickly do the mental math. But before that, I was living in Edmonton, Alberta, and I actually moved here for this job. So I think one of the main ways that my mental health has been affected by the pandemic, and one of the things that I know I've really struggled with is even though I've been here for several months, I will admit that it's, hard to kind of feel a connection with Ottawa at times because I haven't been able to go out and experience too much of it. And so it kind of creates this weird thing where yeah, I'm living here, but am I really living here? I can name on one hand all the experiences that I've had in this city. So I know that's been kind of, one of the ways that pandemic has shaped my mental well-being. Does anyone else have any experiences they'd feel comfortable sharing?
I can jump in. I've noticed recently as March kind of comes to a close and the sun stays in the sky longer, that's had a really positive impact on my mental health. I didn't realize kind of how dark the winter was until it was over, I guess. But definitely, feeling isolated from friends, from community members. We've been, working with these feelings for a full year now. But that kind of, I don't know, that on top of just the winter and not being able to go outside, especially when folks are working remotely from home or attending school from their own bedrooms. We don't get as many opportunities to kind of walk to the bus stop or walk to, the coffee shop as much as we might like to. So definitely just having more opportunities to go outside, I say has had a really profound impact on my mental health recently, at least.
And you definitely touch on a couple of pieces with regards to weather and being outside. That's one makes me think of, I don't know. So I've ended up spending a lot of time on the internet due to a lack of other things to do. And I just remember this one internet post. It was probably someone's tweet or something like that, where they're basically just I can't wait for my COVID depression and my regular depression to meet my seasonal affective depression. And I was just oh yeah, that's gonna be a tough winter for people this year. I think it definitely was. Because the other thing that prompts in my mind that I actually didn't even think of till right now is like, I think the official recommendation for Canadians is to like that basically every one of us should already be taking a vitamin D supplement because of like the amount of light we all naturally get. And I wouldn't be surprised if we come out of this and hear that like Canadians all have vitamin D deficiencies now from spending like the last year inside, or we're all going to be like real good with vitamin D because all we've done is go outside for walks versus like any other social activity. So it could go either way. But yeah, I think
that's quite timely. I was just informed I have a vitamin D deficiency like a few months ago during this winter, and started taking supplements, which has also had a very positive effect. So yeah, definitely some physical and mental health impacts here.
or maybe I should listen when people start telling me to take those supplements though, and I also will see those benefits. Now, what about you, Jeremy or David? Anything coming to your mind or any experiences that you want to share?
I'll go ahead. I think for me, what I've noticed the most is because I very much am a social person. I like to be out with people and it's like good chit chat, like the usual. But I think like what I've mostly noticed is like I think like the effects of social isolation has like a really huge effect on my like cognition. And I thought like that was just something I was making up in my head, but like no, it's probably nothing. But I'm actually taking a class like on cognitive aging right now, and that's like a really big topic. She's like, yeah, like humans like aren't designed to, like do these pandemics and like stay indoors like all day long every day. And then she's like talking about like all these declines that's likely going to happen in like executive functioning and all these other really important areas you need to like do schoolwork. So I mean like even like apart from just I guess like getting that like social isolation and with other people, it's definitely had like an effect on like my school performance, I would say.
Especially when you say like school performance and executive function. I know there's all those articles that come out these days being like, these are all the ways that pandemic is affecting us. And personally, I'll admit to not being a big fan of those articles, even though I end up reading them. But just because like at the end of the day, it's like, one, pandemic is still going on. Two, I can't really do anything about pandemic, like to make it stop. So it's great to hear about like all these negative impacts I'm getting that I'd like to think are not really my fault, nor do they have any solutions. But that's like a separate rant. And the reason I bring it up is the one that's really stuck with me in particular was someone was talking about how we're all getting, I don't think this is the actual term, but like smooth brain syndrome. And we are all finding it like harder to remember things and keep track of things. And I know it had been a thing beforehand. And I've definitely like extra noticed it now that I pretty much can't get through a conversation without like at least trailing off once or being like, I forgot what I was going to say there. And just, yeah, holding a conversation has become more difficult than I remember. And the fact that I haven't done that yet in this conversation is actually really shocking, but I am sure it will happen. So something to look forward to. But no, you're definitely right. I think we're going to be dealing with the impacts of this for a while and being like, so these are all the ways we, atrophied our brains a little.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like it's just I noticed like that like not only goes like school performance, but just like I guess you're like what you're saying too. It's even a normal conversation. It's like I don't think I remember like have like a normal conversation until maybe like just now. Like so yeah, no, definitely like in all areas, even like apart from school, I guess.
Thank you for sharing. And how about you, David?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely echo what's been mentioned. I miss socializing face to face, of course. That was a big part of my life prior to the pandemic. I miss the sort of like friction you get in professional circumstances when you're working face to face with people. I feel like you do a lot better problem solving. You come up with better ideas. I think you work a little bit better. So I miss that. I think I'm moving a bit less because I'm not commuting. I know commutes kind of suck, but you're still walking and you're kind of going places and bouncing around and stuff. So I think that those have all been absolutely negative. However, I do always try and be a little bit like, I know this might be a weird word to use, but grateful, or sort of try and focus on maybe things I've gained too. And I know that like most of us have been probably a little introspective, sometimes in a good way over this year. Like we just have a little bit more time to maybe read a book or focus on a hobby. And definitely the overall situation is really sad and it's really hard. But I do think that for some of us, we've maybe opened up a couple other channels in our personalities potentially, and maybe realized how some of the things we were doing before weren't completely necessary. So I know that I've had a couple like moments like that where I've been like, grateful is not the right word because overall the situation is really terrible, but just a little aware maybe of some of the ways I've adapted to the sort of more solitary life that have been surprising, and maybe I might sustain them after the pandemic too. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Would you be willing to share some of what those new channels or ways you've been able to adapt have been?
Yeah, I mean, I never took advantage of Skyping with friends before, right? And I mean, that makes sense. Like I would see friends, but I'll like with Skype, I don't care where the friend is. And so like, it doesn't matter where they are. They could be in the same city and I'd have to Skype with them, but they could also be in different cities and I'd still reach out and Skype with them, right? So it doesn't matter if they're near or far, I'll reach out to people regardless. So I've actually connected with people that I probably wouldn't have connected with if I was just living my daily life. So that's definitely one thing. And another thing, was fortunate with my situation. So I was one of these people that was able to move to like a small mountain town, which is, I'm totally fortunate in that regard. And so just being able to, I go for a walk. I go for walks a lot, and that's pretty much the only sort of safe leisure activity you can do around here, like without too much COVID exposure, obviously. And just something very simple like that has helped me. And I never really did that too much before because I'd only be walking to places I had to be. So those are two things I think I've started doing, and they're nice, and I probably will carry those through into after this is done, whenever that is, right?
No, definitely. Hopefully we all end this pandemic, walking a little bit more, or, recognizing maybe we don't need to take our car everywhere, or, anything like that. And I think you do raise a really good point about trying to, see, yeah, it's weird to say the word grateful or gratitude, but like see if we can pick out some positives out of, what the experience has been. But I know for myself, for example, like I am a big podcast fan. And a lot of the times when they do like live tours or live shows, they would never stop in like Edmonton or Ottawa because it's a lot of like US podcasts. And if they go anywhere, it's Toronto, maybe Vancouver. But now that everyone's like stuck at home, they're like, okay, let's put our show, like let's live stream it so that anyone around the world can watch. And so I've been able to like see comedians and presenters who, yeah, I never would have gotten to see live before, and get to experience that. So that has been a lot of fun because I admit I was always secretly resentful whenever they'd announce tour dates. I'd be like, cool, that sounds like it'll be fun, love it. Not for me, I guess, but yeah. What about you, Charlie or Jeremy? Any unexpected benefits or new ways of doing things that you're like, you know what, this isn't too bad, or anything that's been a little more on the positive side?
I will say I'm really enjoying having kind of 2 hours of my life back every day that's no longer spent on the bus. That's been really nice. I've definitely noticed kind of an uptick in the number of books I seem to be plowing through as well. So I will admit, when the pandemic comes to an end, I will feel a little resentful about returning back to transit.
Perfectly fair. And probably shouldn't ask you now, but I will be following up about what books you're reading, because that is one of my favorite questions to ask of people and favorite ways to get recommendations. So expect that coming. But how about yourself, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'll kind of just echo what everyone else is saying here. Like, I've definitely been reading more books, like apart from like school books, which is like kind of weird for me. Like, just going back to that whole habit of reading something just for enjoyment. So that's like a big one. But like also just taking up like hobbies such as piano. Like, I only really played recreationally to begin with, but now that like I actually have time for that and I'm at home, I can really just devote time to like practice a little bit, and it always like it pays off in the end. Like I really enjoy it. I think it's a good way to like not like I don't want to say like honestly I don't want to say like waste time, but like just like it's a good like time passer, and like I also feel like I'm like learning and training my brain at the same time, which really helps. And again, like I think a few of you also said like going outside. That's like a really big one for me now, whether that's like a morning jog or just to walk it down, like walk around the block, I guess. But yeah, basically all those. I do like FaceTime more with like people, but I think even that's like getting a little bit tired for me. Like I think I'm experiencing like FaceTime or Zoom fatigue. But I guess in those aspects, it's just there's a lot more time for like self-reflection, and I think that's like also really good for like your mental health. So
I think you all bring up good points about like engaging in hobbies more. I feel like at the beginning, everyone was like, okay, I have to use this time to be productive. And I remember thinking like everyone seemed to go through stages where like last April was like time to learn a new art or craft. You know, May was baking month and everyone got into like sourdough and bread and all the other, you know, pastries. And then May turned into like, or no, June was like everyone's learning to garden now, and then their plants died, so they learned to bike. But I feel like now that we've gone through a year being like, okay, I'm not going to learn anything like new out of this maybe, but I am going to get back to what I actually enjoy doing and what I wish I always had the time to fill my life with, and now we all do. So awesome. Um, and yeah, once again, thank y'all for sharing. And I guess we should probably bring this back to Max's programs at some point, even though I am very much enjoying just getting to chat with y'all about what your experience has been. And so to split up the rhythm and the order a little, Charlie, how have you been finding like Max's programs throughout this? Like, what has your experience been working for those, and what have you, with obviously without naming names, been noticing from like trends and people coming through?
For sure. Well, I mean, for starters, my experience has been really positive just working at Max. Generally, this is such a wonderful community. I have noticed specifically within mental health navigation, particularly from kind of December onwards, so around the holiday season onwards, there was a significant jump in the number of folks reaching out for mental health support, and specifically like seeking support regarding access to therapy. That was really noticeable, and I think part of that has to do with kind of the winter months tend to be a lot more difficult for folks dealing with depression and anxiety in particular. Not to mention kind of the holiday season does tend to be a little rougher for our community, and that is kind of the starting point for the winter. It is weaning off now, I've noticed as well, now that the sun is a little higher in the sky. But yeah, it's the impacts of not only pandemic, but just seasonal depression kind of coalescing together are definitely really noticeable in this program.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And as you say, like I think, yeah, there's already kind of the winter month like surge in people looking for mental health supports, and or de-surge in people's mental health declining. And it would be interesting to see like how that was exacerbated by COVID this year. I sadly don't have any stats or haven't read any like timely articles about that, but you know, I'm sure they're out there, and I'm sure definitely that's been the case. What about you, David? You know, I know one of our recent groups just wrapped up last week, and thank you for giving your first Tuesday off to be here. And you get next week to take Tuesdays back to yourself. But how have you, like, what were you finding in the group this time?
Yeah, well, I was definitely really grateful that I even had the opportunity to participate remotely, right? Because I'm not in Ottawa. but I have an interest in facilitating groups and helping out with this type of work. And so it's totally coincidental that I was able to do so because Max Ottawa moved some of its programming online remotely through Zoom. So that's just a really nice sort of, again, like a silver lining to this situation is you have somebody on the other side of the country participating in an organization that they're a fan of in Ottawa. So that's just kind of a silver lining. And then I do know also that for myself and for a lot of the participants in the group, we would say that we look forward to these sessions because it provides us the sort of little bit of social connection. And of course, we've all got our friends and all that kind of stuff, but you get to know everyone, you get to know each other during these sessions, and you become, friends or acquaintances. And so I know that I would look forward to the sessions, and some of the participants would look forward to the sessions for that social connection benefit, in addition to whatever we were working on. So that was really nice. I also think that, doing it remotely allowed some participants who might have been shy to just kind of listen. Like if you want to be a fly on the wall, you really can be a fly on the wall in a Zoom session. And so I think that it actually helped some participants in that regard, because sometimes we do talk about topics that not everybody wants to talk about. Not everybody wants to, they might just feel more comfortable listening. And I think that these platforms actually really do sort of facilitate that. So I think it was kind of a benefit in that way too. Yeah.
And actually, even as you said that, you sparked a couple follow-up questions in me. One that just occurred to me. So, there's definitely a lot of benefits, I think, to doing it on Zoom. As you said, allows us to connect with people who wouldn't have been able to join because of distance or accessibility reasons beforehand. It allows people, it's a little bit easier, I think, to stay as engaged as you want. Just because it was a group on body image, did it ever come up at all around I feel like I'm so much more aware of, in particular, this space of my body because I've spent so long looking at it at Zoom this year, and how, did that come up at all in terms of how that's affected how people look at themselves or feel about themselves? Or
it's a really good point. I can't remember it coming up. Definitely Instagram is a big thing we talk about, and some of the sort of social media applications that are very visual. So we did talk about how technology in general is definitely sort of a forcing function with regards to how we see ourselves and how we see other people and how we perceive other people. We hadn't talked too specifically about Zoom, I guess, but I absolutely agree that when you don't have that face-to-face interaction and everybody gets compressed down to, a two-dimensional screen or an image or whatever, you definitely lose you lose a lot, or you lose some dimensions of their personality, whether it be through Zoom or on Instagram or otherwise. So
I think that's very true. There's that extra level of remove. And I think I can't be the only one. Hopefully I'm not the only one where even any Zoom conversation, there's at any given time, there's probably a 60 to 70% chance I'm not looking at anyone else. I'm looking at myself and being okay, what's going on there? So just a lot of extra face time I'm getting with me these days. Not always for the best, but no, and I think you raise a good point about technology in general. And I think that's one of the nice things about the Max groups is that, you can talk about those things in ways that are specific to our community. I know in the manual, because I will admit I haven't attended in every body myself, but in the manual we talk about just hookup apps and kind of the ways our particular community approaches body image and sets different standards that I'd say a non 2SGBTQ2, or I said two twice there, 2SGBTQ plus group would kind of center those issues. And I do want to also take this opportunity to kind of plug how great everyone found the Everybody group. And I don't know if y'all ever actually like get to hear this feedback, David, or if it just kind of like y'all send the responses out and it's just kind of like left after that. And I hope I'm not like putting you on the spot or making you uncomfortable because I know people have different reactions to this thing, but there was one in particular I wanted to make sure, or two in particular actually, that I wanted to make sure you hear. One, that Romeo and David were absolutely amazing and they both did an outstanding job and are one of the primary reasons for me that this group worked so well. And without them, I don't think I would have learned as much as I have. And then the next one along the same lines is like facilitators, Romeo and David were amazing, made sure I had enough time to talk. They actively listened, provided insightful comments and tools based on the topics discussed. I felt safe with Romeo and David. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to, one, showcase that people have good things to say about our Max groups, but in particular highlight like the incredible job that it sounds like you and co-facilitator Romeo did in like creating that safe space for people and yeah, making sure that the transition to online was seamless.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Romeo did a fantastic job. And I mean, from my own sort of work with in the gay community, in the LGBTQ community in Calgary and elsewhere, what has become apparent is that if you provide spaces where you're respectful and where you're sort of empathetic towards other people's situations as LGBTQ individuals, they will share a lot and they will together, just like with a little bit of support and guidance, they will uncover so much about their situation and, the growth that you can see in individuals if you just get a couple configurations right, like creating a safe space, for example, or just reflecting their experiences is pretty amazing. So, I think that the participants definitely did a lot of really great work too. So
fair. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
But no, I think as you say, yeah, because I feel like body image and self-esteem is kind of one of those issues that like we all have thoughts on it. We all have experiences with it, regardless of what we look like. But I don't think, yeah, we actually like talk about it too often. And then we're all just kind of like thinking or going around kind of being like, I'm the only one that feels this way, or like I'm the only one that doesn't look like this, and to create those spaces to be like, oh, turns out I'm not alone here. And as you were even saying at the beginning, like have that, not just the tools and the reflections and the techniques, but also even just the space to be like, okay, turns out I'm not the only one struggling with this. And then Jeremy, how has your experience been with peer support? Well, to take a step back, first of all, I'd love to know kind of, because I will admit your position is volunteer versus the other two, which are paid. Not to say that the work you do is any less important or meaningful or valuable to Max, but I would love to hear a bit about what kind of drew you to that volunteer position in the first place.
Yeah, I decided to volunteer with peer support because I'm really interested in doing this kind of work, like once I graduate from school, whether that's like clinical psychology or something like within that field. And I don't know, I think the thing that really drew me the most was just getting that experience of working with people who like feel isolated and using those skills and techniques that are required that you need to have like as a clinician. So once I think my friend actually referred me to Max to join the program and do the training, and I was like, and I think it was a fairly new program. Like I think the peer support program only started like last year, like beginning of the year. So I was like, I'm really glad that we have a program for this, especially for our community, because like especially in the pandemic, but like there are definitely people out there who are closeted and living at home and don't have people to talk to about this kind of stuff. Like they kind of feel on their own in these like situations. So I guess like what really drew me is to also help those kind of people and just provide that safe space for them that they can't really get anywhere else, like it can be like really trapping. And especially something I've noticed like in most of the calls I've taken so far is that a lot of guys are feeling like they just cannot connect with other guys right now, just given the circumstances. And that's like very valid, like given the situation that we're in. So I think just being there and giving them that space that they need to like just talk about like what's on their mind, like, and let them know that they're not alone in the situation. It's been great so far.
No, and I think, yeah, with something that you say that really resonates with me at least. So like, I will admit this is like Max is kind of my first time really working with even like queer communities as a whole. And yeah, like the guys into guys community. And like, I've always worked in mental health. But yeah, first experience with that. And I will say like something that's been interesting to me and something I think I knew, but like didn't really know and internalize is just kind of, you know, how few spaces there still are for like our community to connect, and how much of it is based in, yeah, like hookup apps and like the bar scene and bathhouse scene, and like a very physical and sexual kind of, you know, environment. And, you know, and one, I think it's like interesting to me and great to me that like Max provides those opportunities to, you know, connect outside of that, but also, yeah, you know, just how it's been during the pandemic to then have all of those opportunities gone, and like how that's kind of led to so many conversations of like, you know, what on one hand, you know, sexuality and the desire for sexual intimacy and our sexual needs like didn't go away during the pandemic, and you know, asking people to like stay abstinent until this is all over was just never going to work. But in terms of like, yeah, how we navigate those conversations and what becomes like a safe level of risk, and you know, balancing like the needs of our physical health versus our mental health. I was wondering, is that something that's like maybe not even like necessarily come up for you any of you personally, but like been something you've noticed in like conversations or in other kind of avenues? Or
Well, sorry, I think you cut out there for a second.
oh, I was just asking if like those are similar conversations you've noticed, or, you know, again, don't have to share if you don't feel comfortable, but like even had to have yourself, or just, you know, kind of, yeah, figuring out that balance between, you know, connecting to your community and recognizing that, you know, you have needs, and also, you know, recognizing that kind of like the stay at home is, you know, important, and yeah, kind of navigating that balance and that path.
Yeah, I would say like most of the people who've called and like talked to me have actually been pretty good so far, like about like staying true to like those guidelines. But I think it's very much still difficult, like for them, obviously, going through this pandemic, like some of them living on their own or are like still closeted from their families, or like, yeah, just like in that general sphere, like it's, I think I think for them, like they do very much like want to do things with the community, but I think it's just difficult to find that space when you're kind of trapped. And I don't think like I'm not like, at least in the conversations I've had, like I haven't really heard of people like really continue like kind of hook up in the pandemic, but and like I'm sure there are definitely still people doing that as well.
Charlie or David, anything that's come up on either of your ends? Or
I'd say mainly with regards to mental health navigation, there's definitely been a lot of folks experiencing kind of similar sentiments of just feeling really disconnected from the community in recent months. But I think that's why, you know, holding events like the Max groups are so important as well, because it's, you know, we're doing our best to foster those connections, even if it's in a different format. Yeah, I'd say it's a very common sentiment, unfortunately.
Is fair and true. The idea that just sparked back into my mind is, I don't know if any of y'all paid attention to this, but it was like New Year's Eve, they had that like gay cruise, and I think there was multiple ones, but I'm in particular thinking of the one that like sank off of Puerto Vallarta. And on one hand, there's like this I will admit this like schadenfreude in me of like, well, glad your boat sank. Like this was an unsafe activity. But then it was interesting how it kind of turned into like this bigger conversation and bigger piece around like, you know, because there was like the gays over COVID Instagram account, which I think is still a thing. I don't follow it myself, but like that was kind of identifying these people and posting their information. And, you know, a lot of think pieces around like, okay, is shaming our community for, you know, doing these kinds of things really the right route to go? And again, you know, what is the proper way to kind of like get people to stay safe while also, you know, yeah, how recognize that again, you know, our community has like a long history of being shamed for our sexuality, and you know how that all kind of factors in when we then kind of like also kind of shame each other. So, which I know has been a conversation. It's too long of a story for me to like really tell well in this conversation, but has happened in my friend group as well, where people are, you know, wanting people to be cautious, and then that turns into being like, you're slut shaming me. So yeah. But I
Yeah,
don't know.
I am familiar with the topic you're talking about, the event and the sort of resulting think pieces. And I actually feel pretty strongly about the situation in that like humans are humans, gay people are humans, LGBTQ people, you know, we're all part of this. We all have drives and we all have aversions, and like I think that one of the unfortunate sort of consequences of the HIV pandemic, the HIV, I guess pandemic, which I think is very much still a problem, was the sort of shame that was laid on gay men who were doing a behavior that, you know, they was not worthy of shame. They were just having sex and they were unaware of the sort of association in the early days. They were unaware of the association between their sexual activity and the virus. But, you know, I think socially conservative individuals took it as an opportunity to shame the lifestyle of being gay and sort of use this virus as like an excuse to sort of say that, oh, look, like this is like a justification, or this is it's like a consequence of their behavior. And it was just pretty blatantly homophobic, obviously, that association. And I'm very averse to people shaming anybody, gay or straight, for experiencing something like pandemic fatigue, you know, or making decisions as an individual, because gay people, you know, despite being a part of the LGBTQ community, they're still individuals, and some will choose to maybe be more lenient with pandemic, you know, regulations, and some will follow them quite closely. And so I think that we do have to be careful with how we, you know, choose to corral people within the community. And I think that using shame I think it's problematic. I think it's the wrong way to go. Because at the end of the day, I think we're also individuals. We're a group of individuals. We do share, you know, we're a part of a community, but, you know, people differ on how they choose to behave, and that should be okay because they don't necessarily represent you. But yeah, anyway, it's a big conversation. And I think that what upset me about that Puerto Vallarta situation was how a lot of gay people relied, I think, on sort of homophobic tropes to make sense of the behavior of the people who went to Puerto Vallarta. And I think that that was potentially more problematic than, you know, just going to Puerto Vallarta. But I know it's a contentious topic. Yeah.
Yeah, I will admit, I can't think of like particular pieces or language you might be thinking of, but I think you raise a good point in, yeah, one, probably did reveal some like internalized homophobia of some people, and yeah, kind of the same morality policing or sexuality policing that, you know, we again don't need to spread to each other because we get enough of that from non-queer people. And I think it also kind of like, I don't have any like stats or figures or studies to cite on this, but I would not be surprised if there was like information out there that basically is also like shame doesn't work. Like you try and shame someone into this, they're just going to, at least thinking of myself in like other areas where like, if you try to shame me about something, that's just as likely that I'm just gonna like double down and be stubborn and be like, well, no, I'm not gonna, let you tell me what to do. So um, and then yeah, to kind of bring it back to kind of how like the isolation and what we've all been going through, and yeah, peer support and that space to connect in particular. Just how I was able to find some testimonials about David's work in peer in the Max groups. I have at least one. I probably have more, but they're organized differently in terms of Jeremy's work in the peer support program to highlight the impact of just the program itself and of how great he is. So I like this one where the individual was like, it's good to talk to a gay man that isn't in your immediate circle. It's not always easy talking to straight friends, family, or other guys I fucked. So it is good to talk to someone who's been through similar experience but doesn't know me. And I think that kind of highlights what we're all, I think, kind of saying in different ways of kind of the value of these programs at Max as being like that opportunity to connect and to connect in a way that, almost like doesn't, as we were just kind of saying about like COVID and sexuality, doesn't necessarily guarantee a safe space, but does kind of have like a higher likelihood of creating a safe space, just in case that person's from your community, they have, if not the exact same life circumstances, like similar like experiences and can just kind of more inherently like empathize with what you're going through and what you've experienced. And see, I knew it was going to happen where I then tailed off on what I wanted to say. Oh, and something else we've kind of noticed in peer support is that is actually like one of the most common things that people reach out about is just how do you like make friends in the queer community? Which I'm actually gonna, try and see if I can turn this into a talking point, because I'm always like a little bit like, or even not just in the queer community, I think it's like an adult thing as well, being like, how do you make friends as an adult? Like how does that happen? So I would love to use this to like solicit some tips from you. Like the ones I'll often give when people reach out over a peer support call is like, seeing if people have interests, and if those interests have like, say you're interested in running, we have the Ottawa Front Runners, I want to say the name is. So like sometimes you can connect people with a group, or getting them involved in volunteering at Max, and those are kind of like our big ones. But yeah, I would love to hear if anyone else has any thoughts or ideas or things they recommend when everyone was like, how do you make friends with other queer people?
Well, I can hop in, but basically, when I've been asked this question like on my calls before. Well, I think at first it's important to bring up like I think I've actually had this conversation with you, Spencer, is that like my job isn't necessarily to always find the solution to their problems. It's just to provide support. So obviously, not like every recommendation I'm gonna say is like the end all solution to like making friends during this pandemic, but I think what I've mostly communicated to them was essentially what you said, and find what they're interested in. And it seems like most of the time, like I've said before, they want to like meet people who are also queer and part of the community. And I tell them, well, like you should maybe look into like do like volunteering with us, or like do more stuff with Max. And I think like doing stuff like with Max or like other queer-based like communities in Ottawa is like a really good way to meet other people.
That is fair. Any other suggestions?
Yeah, I think volunteering for sure is a really great opportunity for getting started. This advice isn't really helpful during a pandemic, but like Spencer, you mentioned the Ottawa Front Runners. Ottawa definitely has like multiple kind of sports organizations for folks who identify within the community. So there's the running group, there's Ottawa Volleyball, and there's a few others that I can't recall off the top of my head. But yeah, there's community events, there's leagues, there's Capital Pride in the summer, and they have Pride in the winter as well. Ottawa definitely has a long legacy of being an active community. So I'd say, a quick internet search and you're off to the races. There's lots of opportunities out there. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, they are a little few and far between, which is why volunteering with Max Ottawa is really great. But yeah, lots out there.
Definitely, as you said, quick internet search. And we do actually, you know, to keep plugging Max, shocker how that keeps happening, have like a resource list on our website that, yeah, people can just go. It's under, I think, community resources, and actually lists all those ones. I think another one, just because I remember their rhyming name, like the Rito Speedos, if you're like a swimmer, and yeah. And then David, any tips on your end, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's always important to remember that the LGBTQ community, I think it's kind of like a 5% cross section of all of society. So that's just to say that it's such a diverse group of people coming together to be LGBTQ, right? You have all different cultures, all different, you know, educations, ages, socioeconomic statuses, like there's so many differences within the group that it's like important to, you know, find some common ground. And maybe that's RuPaul's Drag Race, or maybe it's the running club, or maybe it's volunteering or something like that. But I guess don't be surprised with how different sometimes people are on different dimensions, right? But we all can come together on some shared experience, whether it is being gay or being queer, and to foster that sort of part of your personality while still understanding that, you know, there's so much that is different from one another, from each of us, that's special. Like, I think that's one of the best things about my experiences within the LGBTQ community is how diverse it is, despite us all sort of sharing the commonality of being part of being LGBTQ, right? But you get to find out so much more about other people, which is kind of exciting and really fun.
Yeah, and kind of one thought that sparks in my mind is, yeah, kind of like it's a nice kind of like gateway and introduction, you know, gives something like, again, there's kind of that inherent shared experience. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is also a little bit like personal chemistry. And I think that's one of the kind of harder parts about, like, you know, when we're talking about making friends, being like, that's not an instant process, unfortunately. Like, you go and be like, perfect, you know, here's my friend. You know, it's something that kind of depends a lot on like personal chemistry and, you know, how things kind of come together out of that. And so as we start to look towards the future, I'd love to hear, because I feel like we're in a really interesting time around the pandemic. You know, on one hand, we've been doing this for a year. You know, we touched on COVID fatigue, which is definitely very real, and all the accompanying fatigues. And then, but on the other hand, and so it's like, again, knew that trailing off was going to happen and thoughts escaping me. So yeah, we're a year in. We've also got these like more contagious variants that are popping up. And like, I don't know what the situation is in BC where you are, David, but we are, I believe, in red zone here. If I'm wrong, I apologize. Don't mean to disseminate wrong public health information, but I believe we're in the red zone here, and pretty close to lockdown. And on the other hand, like, we've got people vaccinating, so getting vaccinated, and like the end is in sight, but also it's like not anytime soon, and we don't know like how soon it's going to be. So I think that creates kind of like an interesting space for us all to be in right now. And no one has to be like, you know, have a crystal ball or be any kind of like professional with like models and data, but I'd love to hear some of y'all's predictions for the future, and, you know, kind of what you think will then like be, what are some kind of the mental health concerns we're going to be faced with as we like go through the next few months. Like, I know I can start us off speaking for myself. I think, yeah, as we start to like integrate and go to like more social interactions, I do think we're gonna all of a sudden realize just like how bad we've all gotten at social situations. And I would not be surprised to see like a big spike in people talking about like social anxiety, whether it's just like lingering fears, like speaking for myself, I already didn't like crowds at the best of times. So now being like, I feel like I'll consider anything more than 10 people to just be like a crowded room and like, how do I do this? Or even just like going back to what you were saying earlier, David, about like small benefits. One of my old lingering teenage insecurities is like, if I didn't have plans on a Friday night, feeling like I should be out doing something on a Friday night and should be being social. So like in pandemic, not having anything going on, I'm like, it's okay. Everyone's in that place. But now I feel like, especially post-pandemic, that'll be like even more turned up being like, we just got out of pandemic. What am I doing at home? I need to be out doing something. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see if we come out of this to see like a big spike in people's social anxiety. Any thoughts or any other predictions on people's ends?
I mean, I wonder, like for me, I wonder about sort of like the gray zone between when, you know, some people are vaccinated and some people aren't vaccinated, because we're going to have like factions of people, and there might be weird like in group, out group kind of dynamics between the two. So I kind of hope that the process goes smoothly and quickly, such that we all sort of have a similar experience, but obviously that's just not going to be the case. You know, like there's going to be people who are protected and people who aren't. So I wonder how that will, you know, like you might be feeling a lot of peer pressure from people who are going out who are vaccinated and you're not. I don't know. It might be strange like that. So it just seems like that this sort of shoulder of the pandemic, like the end of it, might be long, and it might be sort of characterized by like these gray zones where some people are acting with no concerns, and then others of us are maybe, you know, a lot more risk averse. So I don't know. It'll be hard, but I think that you know, obviously, I'm really looking forward to it being over, and I think that one of the best things about groups like Max Ottawa and peer support groups and being gay is being visible and being in places and taking up space. So I think that when we can do that again, it'll be great, and we'll throw all the best parties again, because, you know, we tend to. So so I think that, you know, it'll be good once it's really 100%, but up until then it'll be kind of tricky, I think.
Oh, I think you raised a couple of good points. One, the first Pride post-COVID is going to be beyond words, I'm pretty sure, like on all metrics, very much so, and it will be an event to remember. And yeah, I didn't even think of what you were saying though about like peer pressure being like, oh, well, we're all vaccinated, so it should be fine. Like, yeah, I could very much see that happening, and then you have to again kind of be like, but is it fine? Like, we don't know who else is there. And I think that's definitely something that's going to come up. Or even what you're saying about vaccinations and like factions of people who like aren't going to get the vaccine, or, you know, aren't trusting of the medical establishment, which, you know, will likely be some people in our community due to a history of being mistreated by, you know, the government and the medical establishment. And to this day, you know, we have blood bans and, you know, all other kinds of discrimination issues. And so yeah, also just getting everyone to be vaccinated and all the anxieties there, I think, is a really good point. Jeremy and Charlie, any thoughts on your end or any predictions for the future?
Yeah.
I think sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think the comments on peer pressure is a really great point. Just because it feels so much more profound or tangible these days. Like, it's always been there, but I used to live on the East Coast. And I find it's just because they have so few COVID cases out there, there's some real community judgment and just some real peer pressure whenever someone does contract COVID. And so I think we're gonna see kind of similar sentiments all over Canada with regards to vaccinations. Hopefully it won't be, you know, too intense, but I think it is kind of the reality. But that along with, it sounds a little strange, but I feel worried almost about like how I'll feel when I no longer have to wear a mask in public settings. And if there's going to be kind of any like peer pressure with regards to folks who like continue to wear masks after the pandemic. Will there be any kind of social transition into whenever someone's just sick in our society, like generally, like if they have a cold, will they like wear a mask in our society nowadays? And kind of, I think it'll be very interesting to see socially how we all kind of transition after the pandemic with that regard.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, it's like, 'cause I think my instinct might go along the lines of wearing a mask, but I will also feel weird and feel like, even if no one's saying anything, feel like an indirect peer pressure if I'm like the only one somewhere wearing a mask. And I think you also touch on, or at least you've sparked in my mind another point that I know I haven't personally experienced, but I know a lot of people like liked wearing masks also just because like it made less of their face visible, and like being able to kind of, you know, walk around without, you know, if you're obviously queer in some respects, you know, being able to walk around with a face covering just made it, you know, less likely that you were going to have to deal with like slurs or you know, homophobic incidents on the street, or transphobic incidents on the street. And I guess a part of me is now like, I hope that doesn't like pick up again, or we see like more reported cases or something like that, or, you know, maybe not even reported cases, but see kind of that, you know, rise again, and that like loss of safety to some people. And Jeremy, anything? I think you did have something to add for Charlie.
Yeah.
Caught you. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna add, I think, I mean, like apart from people who are vaccinated and like, or people who just aren't following guidelines anymore, like I think we are gonna like also see like an increase in people seeking peer support as well, like throughout this year. Like I know like because this program is relatively new, like they haven't had like as many callers like as of recently, but I think like with right now, like I mean, like I'm speaking for myself, like I've actually been finding it a little bit more challenging. Maybe it's because it's been like in this cycle for so long, and you would think that like it would kind of be like part of your like normal lifestyle now, but I think like it's actually been more challenging than the beginning of the pandemic, which is like a little bit weird. So like I mean, I think in that regard, like people who are following like guidelines like very strictly and still like need that space, I think more people are going to use it, and especially like now that it's more accessible, like now we have the chat box option, like I think definitely more people will be seeking our services.
I think you, yeah, again, make a very good point in terms of just like, I feel like at the beginning it was like almost like a novelty, being like, okay, you know what, we're shutting down for a few weeks, we're all going to stay inside. And like, yeah, now that it's been life for over a year, just the idea of like having to keep going is just like, how do we even? And you know, then it becomes a quick, you know, a constant kind of gauge of our own mental health and our own well-being, and what kind of supports we need, you know, to help us get through it. And thank you for mentioning the chat function, because that brings into like, as we come up on the hour mark, kind of how we wrap up. So to toss it back to you, Jeremy, do you feel like you can let people know how they can come and how they can access the peer support program if they need? If
Yeah,
not,
you
don't
just
worry, I got
go
you.
you just go on the peer support website and then you click on the little blue thing with the little, what's it, speech bubble? Yeah, that's like the
Yeah.
speech bubble, and you click on that.
Yeah, I think we're going to see how well my knowledge of recording technology works, because I'm going to see if I can, hopefully the chat records. If not, it's, yeah, maxottawa.ca/programs/peer support. And yeah, there's 3 ways you can connect with a peer support call. You can either email us at peersupport@maxottawa.ca and book the call, like set up a video session through there, or a phone session, or whatever works for you. You can call us at our phone number, which is 702-8429. And yes, I did have to read that because I also, don't have that number memorized or anything. But yeah, you can call us any day between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. on a weeknight and 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on a weekend. Or as Jeremy, you said, you can go to that webpage and click the little blue speech bubble and connect with a live chat operator. And if you're not fully out or you just don't want to deal with speaking with someone over the phone, I'm a millennial. I hate talking with people over the phone. So sometimes you're just like, I just want to text someone. So. And then Charlie, so you work with mental health navigation and Senior Pride Online. How does one access those programs?
Yeah, so for mental health navigation, if you go on our website to our mental health portal, under the mental health navigation tab, there's a self-referral form that you can fill out. It just provides us with kind of some basic information. You can comment on what it is you might be looking for specifically with regards to a mental health provider, or a little bit about what's going on in your life. And you can submit it on our website and it'll be sent to me. And from there, I can connect with you over phone or through email, and we can move forward with the next stages of our program. And very similar with regards to Senior Pride Online as well. On our website under the programs tab, you can fill out just an application form online on our program, and just chat a little bit about why you'd either like to borrow a tablet from our program. This is a program specifically for us LGBTQ+ seniors, where we lend out tablets or we offer tech support services. So folks can fill out the application form there and comment just a little bit about what their needs are. And again, same deal, submit the form on our website. And then myself or a volunteer will reach out through email and we will get you connected.
Awesome. And not wanting to speak on your behalf, David, but you're also, the last group has wrapped up and you won't really be doing the admin pieces. So I will plug Max groups on your behalf. So yeah, as I said, our Everybody group wrapped up, but we are planning to launch our next group, which is an English language skills for anxiety group. And we're aiming for Tuesday, May 4th. And that'll be on Tuesdays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And if you are interested, it is probably either you can go to our website through the mental health portal. There's the Max Groups page, and you can just submit your interest there, and we will reach out to you and set up an intake. Or you can even just email me at m.pecore@maxottawa.ca, and I will hook you up. So on that note, thank you all so much for giving your time to be here today, this evening. We're at a weird point where I don't know quite what time of day to call it, but thank you for being here. I personally thought this was a really interesting conversation, and you all brought up some incredible points, and I feel like, it's nice to kind of chat and communicate about these things. So yeah, thank you all for being here. I'm going to